Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and actually transport ourselves back in time. We're heading to a 40-acre farm in Washington County, Iowa, and the year is 1868. We're going to experience the raw, totally unfiltered reality of 19th century agricultural life, and we'll do it through the eyes of one specific person, Henry Austin Carringer. By digging into this source material, we're going to uncover what it truly meant to come of age on the American frontier, a place where survival relied entirely on grit, your family, and just relentless hard work.
So think for a second about what life is like at age 14 today. It's mostly high school, hanging out with friends, maybe dodging a few basic household chores, right? But for Austin Carringer, 14 was a massive, life-altering milestone. It was the exact pivot point where he officially stopped being a childhood helper and became essential, core labor for his family's very survival. The expectations placed on his shoulders changed practically overnight.
Section 1. The Carringer Household. 5 hands on the farm.
To really get why so much weight fell on a 14-year-old, we first have to look at the incredibly intimate scale of this workforce. This family relied on just 5 pairs of hands, which included Austin's older brother, Edgar. They had absolutely zero hired help to fall back on. At the head of the family, we have DJ, the father, who was bringing his carpentry skills directly to the fields. He worked alongside his wife, Rebecca, who managed the just incredible demands of cooking, sewing, and preserving all their food. Then we've got Edgar at 16, Austin right on his heels at 14, and little Effie at 9. This entire household ran on mutual labor. That meant every single person's work mattered deeply, and anyone's absence, even for just a day, would have been severely felt across the whole operation.
Section 2. The Cycle of Labor. The Relentless Rhythm of the Seasons.
The demands of the farm dictated absolutely every aspect of Austin's transition into adulthood. Nature set the schedule back then, and man, it was unforgiving. In the spring, a 14-year-old like Austin was usually graduating from merely leading a team of horses to actually driving them during the really grueling spring planting. He'd be out there repairing fences and harrowing the ground. Summer meant battling weeds, hoeing corn for entire days, and then tackling the immense, back-breaking physical labor of cutting, raking, and pitching hay entirely by hand. Fall brought the hand-husking of the corn harvest and threshing wheat. Only in winter did the fieldwork finally slow down, but even then, you had the constant demand of cutting and hauling heavy wood just to keep the stoves burning and the family from freezing.
But here's the kicker. While field work shifted with the seasons, the daily chores literally never stopped. Independent of whether it was a blistering summer afternoon or the dead of a freezing winter morning, a 14-year-old had non-negotiable, heavy responsibilities every single day. We're talking milking the dairy cows, feeding the hogs, mucking out stalls, plus he had to provide constant household support, hauling heavy buckets of water for washing, splitting kindling, and assisting his mother with physically intense tasks like butchering hogs in the fall. There were simply no days off.
Section 3. Schoolhouse to Workshop. A Shift in Education. But 1868 wasn't solely about intense physical farm labor. It was also the exact moment Austin's formal education started quietly shifting toward a lifelong trade. During those winter months, when the crushing demands of the fields finally dropped off a bit, Austin and his siblings would make a 1-mile walk in all weather conditions to a one-room schoolhouse. Imagine trekking through deep Iowa snow just to get to class. Once there, a single teacher taught all ages together in one room, and older boys like Austin were actually expected to help listen to the younger children's lessons.
And this brilliantly illustrates the literal transition happening in his life at that time. He was trading his formal schooling, drilling penmanship in copybooks, doing slate and chalk arithmetic, and reading from the famous McGeffrey Readers series, for a highly practical future. He was swapping the rote memorization of geography for hands-on apprenticeship in carpentry from his father, DJ. He was learning how to properly select and true lumber, set a perfectly straight joint, and correctly use a plane and level.
And that brings us to this quote, which perfectly captures the essence of that shift. It was the first taste of a trade that would define his working life for decades to come. This practical apprenticeship at his father's side arguably shaped Austin's future way more than that one-room schoolhouse ever did. For a 14-year-old boy, there was a profound, quiet pride in being trusted with his father's expensive tools and successfully turning out a well-fitted board. It was his real entry into adulthood and a skilled profession.
Section 4. Community and Joy. Finding fun in the work.
Now, lest we think this life was just endless, miserable toil, this township actually found a ton of entertainment built right into their working calendar. They ran on mutual labor and a shared public life. Sunday worship was the big anchor, of course, but their main socializing happened during the work itself. Threshing time brought neighbors together to share equipment, which culminated in these massive communal midday meals. Barn raisings were another perfect example. If a neighbor needed a structure built, everyone pitched in. For Austin, this was a dual opportunity. He got to socialize with other families, sure, but he also got to stand back and observe skilled adult builders at work soaking in more of his future trade. The community would also gather at the schoolhouse for spelling bees, and older men frequently got together to swap stories from the recently concluded Civil War.
But one of the most fascinating examples of mixing work and play from our source material is how they treated the autumn corn husking.
They literally took a mind-numbingly tedious chore, husking an entire farm's corn harvest by hand, and turned it into a massive party called a husking bee. Families would gather together, working as fast as they could. But the real excitement? If a boy found a rare red ear of corn hidden in the husks, he won a kiss or a small prize. By turning tedious fall labor into a festive, high-energy competition, these communities injected joy directly into their own survival.
And, of course, there was actual, genuine playtime too. A 14-year-old boy still found plenty of freedom. In the summer, after the chores were finally done, Austin and his brother Edgar would go swimming or fishing in the nearby creek. He had the freedom to roam the fields, hunting squirrels and rabbits. Winter brought ice skating on frozen ponds, and these long, cozy evenings by the fire where they'd play checkers or his mother Rebecca would read aloud to the family. Sometimes they even had seasonal barn dances with a local neighbor playing the fiddle. So yes, it was a very hard life, but a deeply connected one.
Section 5. The Horizon. A lifetime of movement.
The stability of 1868 didn't last forever, though. Just 5 years later, in 1873, the Iowa farm actually failed, forcing the family to migrate out to eastern Colorado. Eventually, Austin married in Kansas and pushed all the way out to California, with his parents and brother following him decades later in 1898. But the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. The grit, the incredible work ethic, and the practical carpentry skills forged on that 40-acre farm in 1868 served Austin for his entire life. It was the rock-solid foundation that allowed him to weather farm failures and successfully migrate across the vast American West as a skilled tradesman.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to reflect on that monumental difference between being 14 today versus 1868. Austin's foundation was built on relentless physical labor, deep family reliance, and mastering a trade. Think about what you were doing at that age, and consider how your own foundational years shaped the exact person you are right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past, and keep learning.